Alright, now it's time to jump into the season proper for winter 2025. We got a lot of shows to get through. We got 43 at most, I think, to finish. Still haven't seen a release date for Beastar's final season. Yes, I know they finally decided to split part 1 and part 2 into different entries on Mal and Annie List, but too late now, so I'm just gonna wait till it's all out and counted as one. And also, this vampire show also doesn't have an end date yet, so I'm not sure if that's going to finish. So if it doesn't finish, I'll just take it off the list along with Beastars. But let's take a look at our end caps. We got One Piece Log, Fishman, Island Saga, 100 Girlfriends, Season 2, Medalist, Beastar's final season, which if that doesn't finish, what's a good one to replace it with? Honestly, there's not a lot of good ones. We'll figure that out when we get there. But Shangri-La Frontier Season 2 and Blue Box are my end caps for the season. My predictions for this season, I'm expecting to have finished at least 13 shows and at most 19. That's including the 5 at the top that I've already finished here. But also, since there is so much to get through, and a lot of these are 2 core series, so a lot more content potentially to get through, I'm going to try and speed through it a little bit quicker through a method that I've just developed for this season. A lot of these shows are like almost finished now. I'm recording this almost halfway through March, so most of the shows aren't finished, but some of them are almost finished. In particular, these 6 shows at the top here, plus the One Piece remake. So I'm just going to go through these in this order, and see how they go. And hopefully by the time I get through One Piece, everything else will be mostly finished, and I can just go back to the random number generation. So, first up is Beheneko. I know literally nothing about this. I'm a Neko cat. I'm assuming it's gonna be some kind of fantasy series, probably, maybe. Let's find out. Okay, yeah, I think I'll pass on this one. I got about 2/3 through the first episode of Beheneko. I forget what the rest of the subtitle is for it, but it's another one of those reincarnated as a fantasy animal thing. It's not an isekai, though. It is a guy within the fantasy universe dying and reincarnating as a fantasy animal. In this case, a behemoth, but for all intents and purposes, he's a little kitty cat. A very small kitty cat, actually. Like, he's, like, very tiny in comparison to the giant set of boobs that he sits on once he meets the main elf character in this series. And this show's just kind of boring. It's very bland. Everything's bland. I'm struggling to find anything of note to say other than the bad guy for this episode is just this fucking sleazy, icky, lecherous dude. And he sucks. He's not even like fun to hate. I just hate him. At least everyone else in the show seems to recognize that he sucks, though. And I like the very gender non-conforming positivity in the series. This bar is run by, or the guild that this girl goes to is run by this guy. Actually, I don't really know what gender they go by, but very obviously, like, S&M's centric, gender non-conforming sexuality kind of stuff. So that was interesting, at least. But by God, the rest of the show is so bland. The main character who gets reincarnated as this cat is nothing. He has no personality. The girl that he becomes the pet of has no personality aside from look at them titties. I was surprised that this one had nudity. I guess I'm surprised by nudity in general in anime, I guess. But it's really bad nudity. Like, it's not drawn well. It's not enticing in any way. The fan service in the show is like really bad in that it's just not enticing fan service. And the main guy, this cat dude, he just gets Rimuru's absorption powers. Like where he like copies all the things of the stuff that he eats, which I guess is just a major trope now in these fantasy shows. Like, I know it also happened in Monster. I'm sure it's happened somewhere else that I just don't remember. But, it's like, it doesn't even make sense that he would have this power. This show's so boring. It's so boring and lame and dumb and no more. Okay, Beheneko off the list. Up next, Orb on the Movement of the Earth. I believe this one is supposed to be like a retelling of the story of Nicholas Copernicus, who's the guy who discovered, or I guess solidified, the heliocentric model of the solar system. This one has gotten a lot of buzz, so I'm very curious how good it is. Well, I guess I found my buddy daddies of the season. Unfortunate. I made it about 9.5 episodes into Orb on the Movements of the Earth. Now, what do I mean by my buddy daddies of the season? Now, let's see, was it last year or the year before that? It was one of the seasons. There's this show called Buddy Daddies. No one really talks about it anymore, which I guess vindicates the fact that I didn't finish it. But, well, actually, that doesn't matter at all. No one talks about most good seasonals anymore. But anyway, it was a show from a winter season a while back that a lot of people really liked and had a really good reputation. And I watched it and I got 3 episodes into it and I was like, I don't find anything wrong with this show, but I just don't vibe with it. And that's kind of how I feel about Orb. Now, I got much farther into Orb than I did Buddy Daddies. I got 9.5 episodes in, but the show is not it does not motivate me to continue watching it, if that makes any sense. Now, I will fully admit part of that is the fact that this is a Netflix show, which means I don't have Netflix, and so I have to physically boot up every single episode. I have to put it on a laptop and then push play on every single episode instead of letting it autoplay. But even then, I will pause in the middle of an episode much more often than I do something else just to play on my phone or go do something else. And I just don't find the motivation to watch this show for reasons that are much more, what's the word I'm looking for? Much more ethereal, much more intangible than I would like to admit, because it's my job here to describe why I do or don't like a show, and when I don't understand why I don't like a show, it annoys me. But this is a show that, I will say, my main issue, I guess, with it, that's not even really an issue, it's just the vibe of it, is even before I started watching it, I saw what it was about, and I saw the way that it was being talked about, and I was like, this is going to be a show that has a lot of really great ideas in it, but is being presented in a way that I find unengaging. I guess the most accurate way to describe it is that this is a very subdued show. It's very simple and subtle in its execution. Not to say that it's lacking any flair at all. It does have occasional brief moments of like cinematic wonder and brilliance and stuff, but they are occasions. And if I were to be even more exaggerated with it, I would call this show dry. That one will get me drawn and quartered in the street. But I do like what the show is trying to do. Essentially, if you haven't heard of this show, it's about the theory of heliocentrism, like the Earth revolves around the sun, and as opposed to geocentrism, where everything revolves around the Earth. It's about the points in history where that theory was starting to gain traction, or at least people were trying to find out the truth of the world. And heliocentrism versus geocentrism is like probably like the quintessential example of that in human history. This moment where truth is completely turned on its head, and all previous assumptions about how the universe functions were no longer true. And so it delves into ideas of like, what does it mean to seek truth? Why should we seek truth? Both from a secular angle and from a theological angle. What does it mean for the world to be beautiful in terms of theory, in terms of aesthetic, in terms of structure? And it's playing out these really big, cool ideas. And like, when in terms of like science, but also in terms of like reason and like character motivation, in terms of like when like moments where you need to stand up for the truth as opposed to just be skirting by on lies and being like, oh, we'll reveal the truth later. But no, the truth needs to manifest now, which is probably why Rafal is probably my favorite character from the stuff that we've watched. Even though he dies in episode 3. But I found his arrogance mixed with his just absolute unquenchable desire to know the truth to be really inspiring. Inspiring. And those first 3 episodes, I wouldn't call them great, but they were really solid. And I will admit, for like the first episode or 2, I was like, I didn't know he was gonna die in the 3rd episode, so I was like, I don't see how you could make 2 cores out of just this story, which they didn't. So congrats to them. And I thought it was going to like continue moving on with different characters, and it does seem to be doing that, but it seems to be doing that at a much slower rate than it did in the first 3 episodes, which isn't a problem, it's just a thing that happens. Bademi, whatever, is kind of cranks Rafal's arrogance up to 11, and beyond, to the point where it kind of irks me. Yolenta was probably my favorite of this new batch of characters, with her role as a woman in this world trying to seek scientific truth, and how the world just isn't going to respect her at all because she's a woman in 15th century Poland. They don't call it Poland, but it is Poland, because I assume this is eventually going to end with Copernicus discovering the theory of heliocentrism, or a character that is supposed to be Copernicus but isn't named Copernicus. By the way, talk on a side tangent about the complete failure of the American education system. I was yesterday years old, March 19th of 2025, when I learned that Copernicus came before Galileo. For some reason, I had just always thought that Galileo was way before Copernicus. And I was just completely wrong about that. So, shout out to the United States being a terrible place to learn things. And I consider myself to be very smart. Not to brag or anything. I consider myself to be smart. And I got that very basic fact wrong. Anyway. This is also a Madhouse production, and it's certainly no Freerun, but it is definitely an instance of, like, Madhouse is definitely back. This is a much more restrained production. I don't think they did not have nearly the chops that Freerun would have had. It's a completely different staff, so I shouldn't treat it like Freerun, but it's like, the set design is really good. The setting and the backgrounds look really good, especially like these big spacescapes look fucking incredible. Occasionally there's some really great character art, like close-ups, like these close-up shots of Raphael's eyes always looked really good. Occasionally there would be some jank, and overall this is a very restrained production, but there's nothing outright bad about this production. And there's nothing outright bad about the writing, it's just not hooking me. I would have liked just a tad more melodrama, a tad more over-the-topness. Would that have fit in a show like this? Debatably no, but debatably you could have put it in as well. I just find the presentation of this series, of this story, to be much less engaging than I would have liked. And I just kind of struggled to boot up each new episode. And when I get to like over a third of the way through a series and I'm still struggling to boot up an episode, I think I just gotta stop. Okay, Orb is unfortunately coming off the list. Also, I noticed that I miscalculated, and Fruitmaster is also one of the ones that's like ending fairly early in the season, so I'm going to add this to the first round of this into this batch here, just so I can beef up the amount of randoms before I get to the One Piece reboot. But anyway, we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about possibly the greatest Alchemist of all time. I've not heard a single person talk about this show. Hopefully it's better than the last Alchemist show I watched. Okay, so you see, in contrast to Orb, this is a show that just straight up fucking sucks. I got 2 minutes into possibly the greatest alchemist of all time, didn't even get out of the initial reincarnation prep scene because it's so fucking bad. It is so exposition heavy with shit that doesn't matter. Hey, guess what? Explaining how the reincarnation mechanic works when it's very obvious that that's not going to come up again in the show, you don't have to waste so much fucking time on that. You really don't. It's boring, it's stupid, and you're explaining it in a way that's really annoying. This sucks. The goddess character is fucking annoying. It sucks. We don't even, it's all done through the POV of the guy who's getting, actually he's not even being reincarnated, he's being summoned. So, yes, technically still an isekai, but it's not a tensei isekai. I shouldn't be throwing around terms that I don't fully know the meaning of. But I believe that's what a tensei isekai is, a reincarnation isekai, if I recall correctly. And this is a summoning isekai. I don't know what the word for that one is. Anyway, humor sucks. Exposition sucks. I don't fucking care what's going on. Jesus Christ, this shows like this that make me want to bring back the isekai bell. If you're new to the seasonal wrap-up show, I used to have a bit where do I even have the bell in here anymore? No, I must have moved it out of this room. I used to have a bit where every time an isekai popped up, I would ring like a little bell, like one of those bells you see at like a service desk or whatever. Because so many isekai get made and so many of them are so bad. This made me want to bring back the bell. It's bad. Bad. Next. Okay. Greatest Alchemist, not even close. Okay, next up is I'm getting married to a girl I hate in my class. What a mouthful. This one, from what I've heard, has not been well received. Now, if you know me, you know I am a big fan of the, oops, we're getting married now trope. So let's see if they fuck it up. Okay, Google. How do I make the worst, most annoying rom-com protagonists of all time? I got halfway through the first episode of what? I'm married to the girl in class that I hate. Is that what the title is? Super fucking mid. Actually, I don't even know if I would call it mid because it's so annoying. Everything about it is annoying. The banter is so spat out as fast as possible that it's annoying and just sometimes nonsensical. You barely get any characterization at all for these two before the reveal that they're being forced to get married, which is sort of a key component of the thing that I like about that trope in the first place, is you get two people who are interesting people but are also polar opposites, and then you force them to be a ship. I think I've never really like said that out loud to myself before. I've just appreciated the trope as it is, but I think that's one of the things that makes that trope good, is when you have two characters that are really good characters and then kiss. This show doesn't do that. It just goes straight to fucking we're going to force you to get married. And both of them are very annoying. And I really couldn't describe much to you other than like a 5-second flashback where the girl is annoyed that he got a higher entrance exam score than her. And that he's like aloof and lazy, and she's prim and proper and uptight. And that's it. And they fucking yell at each other for half of this episode that I've seen. Half of episode that I've seen. And also the voice acting is not good. Like, we're getting back into like voice acting discourse on Twitter about like it sounds just as bad in Japanese, you just can't tell. Hey, as someone who's been listening to this for well over a decade now, I can tell when Japanese voice acting is bad. This has bad Japanese voice acting. Or I guess more accurately, it has bad voice directing. Which half 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So it's spat out as fast as possible. It's very monotone in its delivery. Now, normally when you say monotone, you think it's something very boring and just very bland and just very mild. This is like a different kind of monotone where it's just incredibly in your face the whole time, and it's just never lets go and never lets the volume down, and it just keeps blasting you with the same volume over and over again. This is still technically monotone, and it sucks. Girl's kinda cute, but the animation is super mid. There's nothing interesting about the way this show looks. There's no interesting cinematography. Oh! I didn't even get to the worst part about this show, is the setup for why they're getting married. Because their grandparents were high school sweethearts, but then they drifted apart. So now they want to force their grandkids to get married to each other to experience that through them. Even though the grandparents are already fucking at this point. Like, they explicitly say that they're fucking. God, this sucks. Okay, get this shit off the list. Alright, up next, Sakamoto Days. This is the big, long-anticipated Shonen Jump adaptation. I actually have been reading the manga for a while, but I actually fell off of it very recently. So let's see if the anime reminds me of why I liked it in the first place. Well, dang it. That's just kinda disappointing. I almost wish it was like a fucking train wreck, because then I could at least get angry at it, but it's just so mid. It is so completely average. I got 4 episodes into Sakamoto Days, and boy, this is a lackluster adaptation. Not that it's completely flat across the board, because people will decide to chime in and be like, but the fight scenes, and like, yeah, like, once an episode, it will have a really fun action cut that has a little bit of weight to it, but like, most of the episode is not particularly interesting to look at, which is kind of Sakamoto Days' whole thing, is like, when you read the manga, which I've read a pretty decent chunk of, I actually dropped it recently. I dropped it right near the beginning of the JAA exhibition arc, whatever the name for that arc is, I guess, with the museum exhibition. I dropped it near the start of that, because I was just kind of tired of not having really interesting character writing. But the thing with Sakamoto Days that got me that far, and it got me pretty far, that's like 13 or 14 volumes or something,
is it's got probably the best action from any Shonen Jump thing that I've ever seen ever. Like, just in terms of the technicality of the fight scenes, the creativity, the impact, the shading, the flow of the panels, the readability of it all. It's got pretty much everything else beat by a mile. That is the appeal of Sakamoto Days, is to have these absolutely fucking incredible action scenes. And this anime simply cannot deliver that. It has good action scenes. And, like, you know what? Fine. If I were to finish this whole thing, which it's only 11 episodes, and I got technically over a third of the way through it, and if I were to finish this, I would be like, that was fine. That was a 6 out of 10. But I'm not looking to finish 6 out of 10s anymore. I'm really not. Like, I still end up finishing 6 out of 10s a lot of the time anyway, because that's just how they play out. But if I'm not looking for something that's just fine. I'm not looking to waste my time on something that's just okay, where I can just zone out and watch something. Like, that's not really my vibe. Because that's what I felt like a lot when I was watching these episodes, is I was just sort of like zoning out and just like melting into the couch, not really engaging with what is on screen, just sort of letting myself passively consume it, being like, yeah, this is fine. It's fine, I guess. That's fine. That's fine. But that's not really what I'm looking for here. And, like, I really do want to know who decided that the director of the show should be the guy who did fucking Kado, the right answer? What? Now I can get angry, because the directing is, like, so incredibly fucking bland outside of the action scenes. Which might sound like I'm contradicting myself, because, like, yes, they do put all of the effort into the action scenes, but even then, all of the effort isn't enough to even match the best action scenes that I've already seen this season. Like, Dragon Ball Daima had better action scenes. If we go back to last season, Bleach had better action scenes. Dandadan had better action scenes. Ranma 1/2 had better action scenes. These are just pretty good action scenes. And when that's the peak and everything else is significantly below that, it's just so uninteresting and boring and bland to look at. I do not like who did the fucking character designs for this. This is I don't know how to describe this aesthetic in terms of, like, the specific, like, shading of the characters and the color design and how the line work is done and, like, the post-processing. Whatever this specific style is, I don't like it when it shows up in anime. I think it looks not that good. And this is probably the best version of it, but I still don't think it looks all that good. And I just really did not care for any of the characters all that much. That's another it, like, really breezes through anything that could have had, like, emotional impact. There's not a lot of time to dwell on things. There's not a lot of silence. There's not a lot of, like, taking a moment to let an emotion sink in. It's just kind of like, gotta go to the next scene, gotta go to the next scene, gotta go to the next scene, which is fine when you're in the action scenes, but when you're trying to explain why Sakamoto has a no-kill rule and the backstory with his wife, and when you're trying to explain Xiao Tang, what's her name? Xiao Tang? Lou, we'll call her Lou, when you're trying to explain Lou's backstory with her parents, and you just completely breeze through that, why the fuck should I care? You don't have the best action scenes of this. You don't of recent memory. You don't even have the best action scenes of the season, and I've just started the season. Like, we've still got Shangri-La Frontier to get to. We've still got One Piece to get to. There's probably some. This wasn't a super action heavy season now that I think about it, but like, even then, you can't measure up to what I've already finished. Dragon Ball. I'm starting to repeat myself. This is just. Oh, also, all of the sound, all sound aspects are incredibly mediocre, except for like the sound effects to give it like the punchiness. Like, voice acting is incredibly mediocre. This is a really mid Ayane Sakura performance. I cannot believe they fucking wasted Tomokazu Sugita on Sakamoto. He barely even talks. What's the point of doing fucking Tomokazu Sugita, who's a well-known comedic actor, who's well-known for, like, shouting? Voice acting's mid. Incredibly generic Yuki Hayashi score. Like, the opening scene has this Yusei Run knockoff in it, for lack of a better term. I was listening to it, I'm like, this sounds a lot like Yusei Run. Is this Yuki Hayashi? Sure is. While we're on that opening scene, it's letterboxed, but the letterboxes are not completely black bars. They're like almost like a filter over the top of a scene, and it's like, but whatever's under the black bars is sort of expanded out a little bit. It looks like a technique I would use to get past copyright on YouTube, and it was infuriating to look at. Also, the Vondi OP, which I immediately clocked as a Vondi OP, even though I completely forgot that was announced, is so bland. This show's bland. That's all I can say about it. Aside from like the super nitpicky details where I can really get angry, overall it's just bland, and that's real disappointing.
Okay, Sakamoto Days coming off the list. Up next, Sorairo Utility. This is a cute girls do golf anime. I watched like the one-shot OVA a couple years ago and thought it was pretty fun. From what I've seen of the cuts that people are posting to Twitter, it looked like a very fun, semi-wacky kind of golf series, slice of life and such. Let's jump in. Hope it's as good as the previous entry.
Alright, I would say that has somewhat exceeded my expectations based on the OVA. I finished up all of Sorairo Utility. Fun little golfing anime that I did not know was basically a half Studio Trigger project. It was done by Yostar Pictures, I think is the name of the studio, which I mostly know as like the one that all the fucking gacha games send their anime projects off to, like fucking Arc Knights and Blue Archive. And those were incredibly boring, if very pretty, adaptations, but very boring adaptations. This one not quite as much because it's got a lot of Studio Trigger staff on it. I believe the director's Kengo Saito, who has done a lot of work for stuff like Little Witch Academia and Kisniver, and I believe Ino Battle. Apparently the original creator for this, whatever that means for this, it also was the writer for Ino Battle, I think, like the light novel author. Because this is an original anime. I was like convinced for like the first couple episodes that this was based on like a manga or something, because that's typically what this genre of anime comes from. Whether it's like, there's not a lot of, I shouldn't say that definitively, but there's not a lot of original sports anime getting made nowadays. Most of them are adaptations of manga or light novels, but mostly manga. And so I was kind of surprised that this was an anime original. And then it's like the color designer was the color designer for Gridman and Dynazenon. Akira Amamiya did some cuts in the final episode. I don't know if he worked on the rest of the show, but he had this very fun cut that was super Kill la Kill-ish in the final episode. If I describe it like that, you will know exactly what cut I'm talking about, where Minami is basically doing a Mako impression. And it's very fun. And that's sort of what got me through what I think otherwise would have been a mostly boring series if not for its presentation. Because, like, I don't really care about golf. It's not my thing. I'll go to, like, Top Golf and do, like, a driving range stuff, because you can sit down and have drinks with friends and stuff, and you don't gotta walk or drive across a whole course. Golf courses are absolutely not my thing. I'm not a golf person. But this show at least got me interested in it to some degree, because it has this very uplifting and inspiring feel to it, along with being presented really well. This sort of starting premise of, like, girl who's just not really good at anything and isn't really inspired to do anything other than, like, play gacha games and other video games, finally finds that something in golf that, like, makes her think, like, this could be my special thing. This is the thing that will, like, add a little bit more spark of excitement to my life. And seeing her grow as a golfer over the course of the series was very fun, ending with her doing, like, her first solo course. And yeah, it was just a very fun show to watch. Really liked all the characters. I like that they did not attack Haruka's backstory with much, like, intensity. Like, even as someone who is, like, a known lover of melodrama, I feel like if they had gone, like, the super melodramatic route here, it would have been a little too much. But just to have Haruka be like, yeah, I kind of just was too hard on myself and too extreme in my pursuits in the past, but that's behind me now, and I've mostly grown and matured past that, and now I can just talk about it normally without, like, getting hyper emotional about it, even when someone gets hyper emotional at me about it. That was a very fun aspect of this show. And just sort of the cycle of, like, inspiring people to do golf and to, like, make the subtle changes in their life or in their playing style or in anything to just add a little bit more sunshine to the way they interact with the world. Very shonen in that way, but in a very subdued kind of manner. I'm not going to say this is a very subdued kind of show, but it is a slice of life sports series for the most part. So it does have some, like, explosive kind of fun moments where it's, like, pulling on, like, sports anime history for like its influences and stuff, just to have some fun little references here and there. But for the most part, it's just a very chill series that really lets you vibe and watch cute girls play golf. My initial impression after like the first 3 episodes was like, this has got like a solid balance between comedic hijinks, slice of life vibes, and some like decent fan service moments. Just cute girls. There's a lot of cute girls in this show. Haruka especially. I really liked her. But there's some like fun little fan service shots in there here and there that are just not. They're not like over the top or anything. They're just very, just there and just very well drawn. And the majority of this show is just very well drawn. It's nice to see a show that just looks competent front to back. There's not a lot of explosively big moments. It's not a lot of like big displays of like color, vibrancy or anything, or like huge Sakuga things. But it's very well composed. The editing is very solid, and just the crispness of the character designs. I was a little concerned about the character designs when I saw the first key visual in comparison to the OVA, but I think the way that I see them move in the show, I'm definitely liking the subtle changes from the OVA to the TV series. Honestly, I don't really have a whole lot else to say about it. I will say Minami's voice actress, it sounds a little inexperienced. She's been in the industry for a while, but she doesn't have as many roles as you would expect based on how long she's been in. Because I think she's been acting since like Ino Battle, which was 2014, if I recall correctly. But she's mostly had like bit parts here and there. She's one of the characters in Wake Up Girls, I believe. And then there's another show where she plays an idol character that I forget. It sound a lot. Some of her lines sound very forced and artificial. I was not super into her in the beginning, and it doesn't fully go away by the end of the series, but I think she definitely does get better as the show progresses. It becomes much less overly sugary and much less artificial sounding, and she finds her voice for her character as the show starts to wrap up. So maybe it was a sound directing thing. Who knows? But yeah, it's just a fun little golfing show. I would not mind a season 2, but also it wrapped up pretty nicely here. Don't really want to overstay the welcome. I'd also like to see the staff for this move on to some more interesting projects too. I'll definitely be following them as they go about working in the industry more. But yeah, good show.
Alright, Sorairo Utility is complete. We're going to go not too far up on the list, but we're going to put you in the number 6 spot with a light 7. Fun little nice golf vibes. Alright, next up, the last not end cap for this episode is going to be Bogus Skill Fruitmaster. Have not heard anyone talk about this. I took a glimpse at the MAL score and it was pretty abysmal. And anytime I see something skill in a title, triggers my fight or flight. So I'm not super hyped about this one, but let's give it a shot.
I have nothing to say about that one. I watched like 5 or 6 minutes of Bogus skill, Fruitmaster, whatever. It's so exactly like 50 other isekai that I've seen already. No, not isekai. It's not isekai. I shouldn't say that. Skill. Let's call it video game based fantasy world. Whatever fucking genre this is. I've seen this set up so many fucking times already. This one's not anything new. It's like, oh, you get your special skill divined for you, and the guy goes in and is like, yeah, I'm gonna be like the best dude, and he's got like his female companion who obviously wants his dick come in, and she goes first, and they're like, you're the sword saint, you are like the best ever dude. And it's like, yeah, I've seen this already. And I didn't even get to the part where they talk about the fact that he's like really good with fruit. Apparently it's going to be his skill. I didn't get that far, even though I knew it was coming, because I was so... What's the opposite of the scales falling from your eyes? The scales being put back on your eyes, where it's just like, I'm being inundated with the muck of mediocrity. And it's like, I've seen this all before. The presentation is terrible. There's nothing interesting going on. I don't need this.
Okay, that was terrible. Bogus skill off the list. And that's the end of that first little introductory bit of finishes. So it's time to jump down to our end caps with One Piece Log, Fishman Island Saga. I am not super experienced with the One Piece anime. I've read a ton of the manga. So let's see how this experience goes.
Well, that was certainly an interesting experience, but unfortunately, I'm not really feeling this one. I got 7 episodes into One Piece Log Fishman Island Saga, which is right where the Straw Hats get invited to King Neptune's palace. I don't talk about it super often on the seasonal wrap-up show, or anywhere for that matter, but I am a One Piece fan, specifically of the manga. I've been reading the manga for, God, like 3-ish years now, maybe? No, it's gotta be longer than that. It's gotta be like 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years. Yeah, it might have started during the pandemic, actually. I don't quite remember. But I've been reading the manga for a hot minute. But I have not really seen much of the anime. I think I tried out like the first couple episodes of like the actual like first episodes well over a decade ago at this point. Or it might have been about a decade ago at this point, and I was just like, yeah, this is okay. I don't really feel super strongly about it. And I've seen Film Red, which is probably my favorite One Piece thing. And then last season I saw Fan Letter, which was also really good. But I've not seen a lot of the anime proper. Because it's so massive, and I've heard terrible things about how it's paced in certain parts. And also it's 1,000-something episodes. I simply do not have time to catch up on that with all the other shows that I have to watch. So I was like, well, they're doing a complete remake of Fishman Island. Surely this will just be like a fun little, just like, yeah, this will be a good adaptation of Fishman Island. And it is, I would not call it a good adaptation from what I saw of it, which is about a third of it. Because, well, obviously I don't think so because I didn't finish it, but, how do I say this? It's got a lot of things up. The One Piece adaptation, if this is indicative of what One Piece is being adapted like, I can definitively say I don't really have interest in watching the anime. Because it has a lot of... For one thing, it has a lot of very weird aspects to it. Like, the editing is very weird. Like, there are a lot of moments where it just, like, cuts to... the cuts just don't make any sense, and it just completely throws me off balance. It's not super pleasant. There's also this thing it does with the sound design, where... and I've had someone on Twitter confirm this for me, that this is something that has happened with the series outside of Fishman Island, where sometimes there will be a sound effect that is just way too fucking loud. Like a persistent sound effect that, like, is so loud and that it covers up dialogue that is happening in the scene. And I can't tell if it's supposed to be a joke or not. I can't tell if it's, like, an intentional gag. Like, because it doesn't really play as a gag. It's never drawn attention to. So it just feels like a audio mixing mistake. And there were two very notable instances of this. The first time I noticed it was like the first or second episode. Usopp is, like, paddling on this cart or something through Shabandi. And the paddling is making this squeaking sound that is so loud and so obnoxious that I couldn't pay attention to what Usopp was saying. And I was like, that's weird. And then, I think it's episode 5 or 6. Luffy I'm pretty sure it's episode 6. Because it's when they get to Fishman Island for the first time. And, like, Luffy is just, like, kicking his feet in a pool. And the sound of the water, of his feet sloshing through the water, is so loud that it's completely distracting. So, if that happened twice in the span of 7 episodes, absolutely not gonna put up with that. Because, like, that is just such a weird, dumb thing. Now, I'm not saying that's the only reason why I'm not gonna watch this, because there's a lot of... I just don't find this to be a better way of consuming One Piece than reading the manga by a substantial margin. If they were, like, close and the anime was only, like, slightly worse, I would have been like, yeah, it's not as good as the manga, but it's still good. But I don't think it is. I don't like the editing, I don't like the sound design, I don't like the humor. By God, One Piece humor is either shockingly funny or the most unfunny fucking thing you've ever seen in your life. And there is no middle ground. Because, like, it does... I had forgotten
that like a lot of One Piece humor is like the manzai style comedy where it's very obviously like the straight man, funny man kind of thing. And I forgot how often Usopp is the straight man in this, the Tsukomi, to the point where like he is just constantly doing like the hand thing, the hand gestures that the Tsukomi does in the manzai comedy bits when the Bokeh does the punchline. And it's so, I just find it so not funny. It's just so like, that's the joke. That's what it reminds me of every time that happens. It's like, here's a joke for you. Okay. I'm not laughing. And also, about Fishman Island specifically. When I first read the manga, people were warning me that Fishman Island had this thing with Sanji where they described it as like this is the worst that Sanji ever gets in the manga or in the series. And I read Fishman Island and I was like, I don't get it. He didn't seem much worse than usual. Am I missing something? So when I watched the anime, I finally understood what they were talking about. Because seeing Sanji go girl crazy for like a couple small panels in the manga, and then like just moving along to the next bit, is not the same as seeing Sanji go completely fucking girl crazy for like a solid 30 seconds of animation. It is so much longer than it needs to be. It's not funny. It's borderline offensive at times with I forget what they are. Whatever island he got booted to by Kuma. I'm not gonna say it's like transphobic because I don't fully understand the intent of what Oda was doing, and also I haven't read those chapters in several years. But like, it's certainly not funny. Like these men trying to look feminine and very obviously failing to look feminine. It's a thing Oda does, and this is one of the worst instances of it. Like, fuck, what's that character's name? The one that Luffy meets in Impel Down and breaks out with Luffy. I like that character. I don't like these side characters that essentially tortured Sanji for 2 years by not being women, but kind of being women. Is that what the gag is? I understand what Oda was trying to do. I just don't think it's funny. And so, for it to be brought up so many times in like the first 6 episodes of this remake is just so not funny. And like, Sanji is just so much more extreme. And you know what? Actually seeing it in animation made me realize, yeah, there kind of was a difference between pre-time skip Sanji and Fishman Island Sanji. Like, pre-time skip Sanji, he's still a womanizer, and he is still flirting constantly, but he's like a very, like, chivalrous womanizer who's often, like, a bit more level-headed about it all. And then Fishman Island, he has just completely lost his fucking mind. Again, I understand the narrative reason for it, but the narrative reason for it is fucking stupid.
it is stupid that that narrative reason occurred. And I don't like it. So that is my that is my Sanji rant, I guess. I actually typically like Sanji quite a lot. Like, Whole Cake is one of my favorite arcs of One Piece, period. It makes Sanji so fucking cool and interesting as a character. Easily like a top 3 arc by a long shot. But see, I'm struggling to even say anything really noteworthy that makes me want to drop this, because like it does have some good points to it. When the humor is good, it can be very funny. Like the scene of Caribou in the barrel, like peeking out of the barrel and like internal monologuing his plan on how he's gonna kill all the Straw Hats, but you just see Frankie just staring at him for like 20 seconds before Frankie like seals the barrel shut. That was fucking hilarious. Just very funny framing, setup, and payoff. And it has, like, even some of the Manzai stuff is kind of funny sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes. That's what I mean when I say, like, the humor's either really good or fucking terrible. And I actually do like the character designs. Again, I have not seen One Piece in a decade in animation. So, like, I had not seen post-Wano character designs other than stuff from like clips I see on Twitter, and these are good character designs. I really like them. It's a very unique aesthetic. I also really like the voice cast for One Piece. I think the voice cast, the people that they choose to play all of these characters, are really good. And maybe it's just because I've seen Film Red so much already, but it sounds like exactly what I think these characters should sound like. Nami in particular, I really fucking like Nami's voice. I'm a Nami stan. I think I mentioned this in the fan letter episode of this show, but I like Nami a lot. And whoever they cast for her, I think, really did her justice. I do have some complaints, a lot of complaints actually, about the voice directing, because that's another thing about One Piece as an anime that I simply do not like, is how fucking over the top a lot of the acting is. And I know it's not the actor's fault. It is very clearly that the director asked them to do this because all of the characters do this. It is so, like, over the top and exaggerated that I just can't deal with it. I just can't take it seriously. And again, it's a comedy show. I'm not supposed to always take it seriously, but they do it in moments that are supposed to be serious too. And so it's like, I can't take it seriously. I don't like how the voice directing is. I don't like the audio design. There's so much of the show where I don't like how it sounds. Like, even the soundtrack is very fucking corny sounding. I'm probably gonna get shamed to hell and back for that. Actually, I don't know what people typically think about the One Piece soundtrack, but like, from what I've heard of it in these 7 episodes, I don't like it. Sorry, I'm very tired. I actually like passed out right after watching episode 7 because I was A, tired from work, and B, not really energized by this show. It's not quite in the same tier as like what I said about Sakamoto Days, but it is giving me sort of that same feeling where it's like, yeah, this is passable to an extent, but it's not anywhere close to being as good as the manga. And it's like, I have watched anime after reading the manga before and liked the anime. Like, My Hero Academia, I think, is a really good adaptation of the manga. I think Jujutsu Kaisen is a better adaptation than the manga, considering that I dropped the manga. There are many instances of Shonen Jump anime where I think that the adaptation is good enough to watch compared to the manga, and I'm definitely going to get a lot more instances of comparison with this season. Like when I finally get around to Blue Box, I'll get to compare there because I really fucking like Blue Box. And even not Shonen Jump stuff, I'll get around to with Medalist is definitely going to be one that I'm going to have some interesting comparisons with because I also really like Medalist. And I'm not like a die-hard go to bat for every single time One Piece fan. I do like One Piece a lot, but I am not like a stan of One Piece. So, and even then, I can say, like, the manga is significantly better. So I don't really feel like watching more of this. Even though I do like a lot of aspects of Fishman Island. I like how it deals with racial discrimination and how that causes distrust to brew between different races who would otherwise just normally get along with each other. I liked that. But I don't really feel like watching... I don't really feel like watching a worse version of that.
Okay, Fishman Island Saga is unfortunately coming off the list. Really wanted that to be good, but them's the breaks, I guess.